Good afternoon. My name is Chris Galati, and I have the pleasure of introducing to you our student-selected faculty speaker, Dr. Doug Mabie. Dr. Mabie teaches our AP Language and Literature, AP Language and Composition courses, along with our IB Theory of Knowledge course and other courses in the English department. This is his third year at AISC, and he is the very proud father of 3 children, one of whom is graduating today. He has a master's in education from the University of Alabama, along with a master's and a PhD in English from the National University of Singapore. Now, I've really enjoyed the opportunities I've had to learn all about Dr. Mabie's travels and how the various and unexpected twists and turns of his life have taken him on many different adventures, working and living in several locations around the world before Chennai. In fact, Dr. Mabie first came to Sri Lanka 30 years ago as a Fulbright scholar. He has also worked in Ecuador and Singapore, and this is his second time living and working in India. And it's this sense of adventure that Dr. Mabie brings to the classroom and to his students. They all appreciate and enjoy the energy and enthusiasm that he shares with us. In addition, he has brought his love for chess and music, especially the guitar, to our community, along a passion for sports, including coaching, soccer, and volleyball. So I'm sure that we are all excited to learn more from him today. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Mabie to the stage.
And I believe we have a slideshow that we're going to bring up here. Thank you. Fantastic. Hey, thanks to my Wisconsin paisano, Mr. Chris Galati, for that fine introduction. Parents, family members, faculty, administrators, school board members, and most important, the American International School of Chennai class of 2024. Welcome to tonight's graduation ceremony. I'm humbled and excited to be chosen as this year's faculty speaker. Thanks for the opportunity, and a shout out to all of you who came from far away to be here tonight, especially Grandma Lynn and Grandpa John. Upon learning that I'd be speaking at tonight's event, I asked the amazing Miss Sunita in the high school office to send me a list of this year's graduates. As it turns out, there are 40 of you. Now, I scanned the list, and to my amazement, I realized that I've taught 39 of you during these 3 years at AISC. 39 of 40. Imagine that. Only one of you slipped through my grasp, and I double-checked. Okay. Now, the great thing about a small school like this is that people get to know each other in ways that they don't at a big school. There are fewer of you, and for a teacher to remember, and so you stick out. Your class in particular stands out. For when I arrived in 2021 during the pandemic, the campus had been shuttered for over a year and was still closed as school began. I first met you through a Zoom window, which is an odd and distant way to build a student-teacher bond. Yeah, but we managed, right? Still, I couldn't wait to get back on campus because as a teacher, one of the ways I try to create a personal connection with my students is by arranging my classroom to be inviting and curious. Lots of bric-a-brac attempts to prop up sleepy eyelids, from my Burmese umbrella to my Gutenberg Bible page, from colorful gods to erupting volcanoes, from Egyptian shisha pipes to the legendary Woody Guthrie. You'll find an old horn, cheap guitar, regulation chessboard, creepy puppets, and an upside-down map in my room. But of all of the objects of cultural, religious, and historical significance, my sophisticated and worldly AISC students are almost always drawn to one particular object, or more precisely, 2 versions of the same object. My rubber chickens. Now, it stands to reason. Bright and squishy, loud and demanding, and in a constant state of awe and wonder at the sublime beauty all around us, rubber chickens nicely embody silliness, playfulness, and youthful identity. Now, if you haven't heard, there's this new invention out there called the intraweb. It's sick, as all the kids are saying these days. And a quick search there reveals the versatility of the rubber chicken. Check it out. For one thing, they travel in flocks. And if you're lucky enough to have an automobile, you can try this. And if you need a good cover of Queen's Bohemian Rhapsody, you could do a lot worse. That's enough of that. Okay. So, as they are so central to my students' class experience, I thought it appropriate to include my rubber chickens in my senior portraits of you as I demonstrate how much each of you has made an impact on me. So now, Milo was the first raptor I met in real life. It was at Kovalam Beach. He recognized me from Zoom, and he came up and introduced himself. I'll always associate my entry into Chennai with Milo. There's Hanako, who boldly rapped one of her early assessments in my media class. When not pumping iron and shredding muscles, D-Raj wrote thoughtfully about science and spirituality. Anya, who in 10th grade would tremble when asked to stand and deliver, blossomed into a strong, confident orator in public speaking. In that same class, Iris thundered away as to why Saudi Arabia's new Lion City is an eco-disaster in the making. I still see Ahana, Ritika, and Vicky attempting to stay warm in the freezing mountains of Ladakh during our Discover India trip. On a school-free flood day, Gaia and Karan sat with my family and me playing cards while Gaia tutored us in Spanish. Que awesome. I recall Jongmin's Midnight Nightmare film and Gautama's cheesy lawyer advertisement from Media's Text. How many times did Adesh materialize late in class with a Canadian sorry, which echoes my own Wisconsin accent? Ji-Yun is the second Wu I've taught after her big brother, so she became Wu 2 to me. But tonight, she is definitely Wu number 1. I picture the bizarre Uzbeki water park that Ford conjured in his narrative essay. For some reason, Do-Yun tells people that I'm her best friend, which is odd to say about your English teacher, but I roll with it. On flute and guitar, respectively, Stella and Hosip's 2023 cabaret performances still mesmerize me. Also at cabaret, I recall Chanak striking power poses with the bass while he admired himself. There's Chakradhara Ritvik Krishna Pasapuleti, whom I lovingly call Poo-Poo, busting his butt to make the 2023 football team. And at that same tournament in Dhaka, Jin's left foot terrorized Saisa opponents, as did Cedric's fiery French temper. I recall Ricky Balaji's fascinating 10th grade social studies paper on onion farming in India, and then his asking my daughter to prom. Yeah. Terrifying moment for a dad. The prom thing, not the onion farming. Yeah. I once read an essay about how mine and Sawyer ironically avoided science homework by trying to build an electric bike. Great. After many brunches at the Leela Palace with my colleague Mark Condon and his lovely family, Anais knows where all the bodies are buried. Yeah. Ion once dropped by my house with my boy Aniket and unexpectedly saw his TOK teacher in a sleeveless kitty cat t-shirt. I think he might be scarred for life. When I see Kavya, yes, I think about the dangers that her amazing art poses to the larger marine community. Amir gave me a fascinating lesson on windsurfing fins in his TOK exhibition. Rachel Ra, whom I call Rachel Hurrah, once directed a film from the perspective of a cockroach, while Sung Min shot a movie on the terror involved in misplacing one's cell phone. Now, Miss Sunita's list was organized alphabetically by first name, yet coincidentally, Tara, Trisha, and Varnika appear right next to each other on the list, just as they always do in the hallway. It's creepy, kind of like the Shining twins. Now, Tara cultivated a sassy voice in her writing. Trisha gave a new meaning to the word procrastination, and Varnika batted back my goofy jokes. So Young wrote the best college essay I've ever read without punctuation. And before classes, Neil helped me practice the 3 words of German I remember from high school. Gio Lee filmed a basketball dream where she awakes just before hitting the buzzer beater. And then there's Carola, who could fit more words into a short writing conference than are contained in the first 2 volumes of the Oxford English Dictionary. Impressive. That's all of you, except for two. First, there's my favorite from the class of 2024, and yes, I'm biased. Of course, I'm talking about my daughter, Misha Marilyn Maher Mabie. She possesses my heart, my whole heart, because every day she teaches me the most about being a proud father, loving husband, and dedicated teacher. Tonight, she's breaking my heart. I'll miss her desperately next year. I love you, Misha Bear. And so there's only one of you who's not been mentioned. Only one of you who managed to skip over the rocks of this AISE high school experience without once tumbling into my class. Pichula Jayakumar. Curious. If I were less secure, I'd say you were avoiding me. If I were a bit paranoid, I'd say Jeff Kilmer advised you to stay clear of me. Pichula, you are for me uncharted waters, the country I've not visited, the tough nut I've not cracked, my white whale, my holy grail, the great mystery wrapped in a riddle. Our paths simply have not crossed. My rubber chickens and I have searched high and low, and we've not been able to pin you down. Now, I've heard people spill the tea about you, Pichula. Mostly they say you're an amazing artist and a really cool kid. Now, it seems that your high school experience wouldn't be complete if you weren't subjected to at least one lesson from my chickens and me. So hold on. Enough. Are you going to be able to control yourself? Okay. All right. Tonight's lesson, it's called Crooked Lines and Doing the Math, in a nod to Mr. Kilmer, who's leaving after all this time. Let's give him a quick round of applause. It's amazing. So many crooked lines on the map, speed bumps, forks in the road, and detours brought me here tonight. Let me show you. As Mr. Galati mentioned, exactly 30 years ago, I came to South Asia for the first time. In 1994, I was 24 years old, had just finished college, and was off to explore religions in Sri Lanka. After experiencing months of debilitating, crushing culture shock on that small island, I typed the following entry into my journal just before I left in 1995. Until you've begun tearing, you haven't a clue how many roots deep and shallow you've allowed to take hold. I want you to think about this as you're saying goodbye to your friends. Sad, for you know you won't be seeing people for a long time, if ever again, and happy because you met them in the first place. It's emotionally confusing. South Asia is a frustrating, difficult, taxing environment in which to live. I don't know if I could ever really come back long-term for that reason. So just dwell on that last line for 1 second, okay? For me, traveling to South Asia was not a straightforward path, but rather a journey of twists and turns. You see, I didn't much like high school, nor was I particularly good at it. After graduating in 1989, I just wanted to sing and strum my guitar in local bars. Yes, that's me. Now follow. My dad, who had never finished university, asked me to just try college because he knew how hard life could be without a degree. So I enrolled at a local university in Milwaukee, Wisconsin at the last minute. There, I met a teacher who changed my life. A young PhD candidate, Jeff was the first person to ever really show an interest in me as a thinker or a writer. I'm forever indebted to him. To my shock, he recommended me to the honors program at the university after a semester. I soon began tutoring after I found just a little bit of academic success. Then a friend introduced me to an English professor who lit in me a passion for ritual old texts and myth. Dr. Fisher suggested that I check out a new program at the university in world religions. I did, and added a second major to English and comparative religions. A year later, a friend dropped a pamphlet for a fellowship on my desk. Called a Fulbright, it paid well to send students overseas to study offbeat topics and broaden cultural horizons. At the time, I was reading about Sri Lankan monks, even though I couldn't find the country on a map. I whimsically applied to study religions there, and incredibly, I got the fellowship. Now, this government grant wouldn't provide health insurance for my girlfriend, but it would for a wife. So Jennifer and I decided to elope to northern Wisconsin. She was 21 and I was 23. just a few years older than you guys are now. We were babies. During that year in Sri Lanka, Jennifer bloomed while I withered. As our time there came to a close, I found myself thunderstruck, battered, and exhausted by a culture oh so different from my own. And that's when I penned those fateful lines. Now, fast forward 30 years. I went on to spend the next 27 years of the next 30 years traveling and teaching outside of the United States, 24 of those years in South and Southeast Asia. And as a result of that disjointed route, I met three little people who gave new meaning to my life when they chose me to become the father of our loving family. You see, my presence here today is the result of detours and happenstance. Some may say fate, but I don't know if I believe that. Never when I penned that prediction about not coming back to South Asia could I have imagined standing here tonight 30 years later speaking to you and a family that just happens to be 3/5 South Asian. So many wonderful crooked lines. The second part of my lesson, Petula, is about doing the math. Now, my buddy John in Hawaii also teaches English, but he regularly urges his students to do the math when it comes to our daily decisions. What he means is that we should weigh our intentions, the karmic fuel of our existence, and regularly calculate the costs and benefits of our choices in order to get the most out of life. Consider, might a new risk result in a bit of embarrassment, a slap on the wrist, or a little money lost? Perhaps. But might that choice also possibly pay off in the form of self-confidence, a fresh perspective, or a new direction? Petula, do the math. Because you see, your time on this spinning marble is limited. And as you may know, artists that you are, the Baroque painters of the 17th and 18th centuries would sometimes place a skull in their paintings to remind us that we will all die one day. This dark reminder is called a memento mori, which translates to remember death, and urges us to think about this all-important question. What do you truly want to do with your life? How do we do this math? Well, my big brother Dan uses a simple approach. To any new experience, he asks, what's the worst that can happen? And that's Misha, by the way. Misha stole this question from her Uncle Dan for her senior quote. A retired firefighter and paramedic, my brother has seen his share of human suffering and death. And so he gets what it means to do the math with the limited time that we all have. Look, if you ask your crush out on a date and you're rejected, yes, it hurts for a moment, but then it's over and you move on to a new crush. You go after a job and you don't get it, bummer. Apply for another one. Worried about that new hairstyle? Guess what? It grows back, says the bald guy. Yeah. Now, might a different experience burn down a relationship, land you in jail, or end in severe injury or death? Stop and do that math too. Maybe reconsider the decision. Remember though, when life's bad things do happen, and trust me, they will, most moments of inconvenience, anxiety, and fear almost always end up building character, or at the very least, gifting you a great story. Think of our amazing Discover India trips. Much more than the fun, easy moments, we remember the kid who threw up in the tent. Remember, Ricky? The landslide that almost ended our trip. Remember that, Matt Kelly? And the flipped raft that left us floating down the frigid Mahakali River. So, Petula and the rest of the class of 2024, and thank you for your patience, enjoy the crooked lines on the paper map of your life, not the Google map. Though your cell phone tells you otherwise, in analog time and space, among real people, you are not always the center of the world. You'll do well to remember that. And consider what you truly want in life rather than what social media streams and others tell you that you should want. And then do the math. For you, what is the acceptable cost for an extraordinary life well lived? And if you don't know what you want, try a new experience and ask, hey, what's the worst that can happen? You'll be amazed at where you end up. Maybe even on a stage in some unexpected part of the world, surrounded by amazing people from amazing places like I am tonight. So Petula, like my father, Roly Mabie, used to say, may rest in peace, here endeth the lesson. Consider yourself part of my rubber chicken tribe, sister. Thank you and congratulations to the American International School of Chennai Class 2024.